Hello, Haley. This Edpuzzle is just for you, and it's to get you set up for a doll's house, the alternative story to the fall while you're out for your surgery. Okay? So, here we go. All right. I'll make sure to take notes. You're going to need this. Okay? Not on everything. I'll let you know when to start taking notes. Okay? Anyway, the beginning's just kind of fun stuff. All right. So, Heinrich Ibsen is the author of A Doll's House. And he is a very important author. He's on stamps, airplanes, statues, paintings. He might even be on money, I'm not sure, but he is humongous. He's considered the Shakespeare of the 19th century, not just for the Norwegians, but for the European kind of Western world, because he really did change theater from being mostly about princes and kings and heroes that are like wearing a knight shining armor stuff to being about middle class average people, which if you think about it, modern day TV and movies tends to be about the middle, or the poor, not just about royalty. In fact, it's more of an exception that it's about gods and royals than it is about just us, And he also helped write operas. He didn't do the musical scores, but he did the plot and the dialogue and all that stuff. So he's a huge guy. He's as huge as his mutton chops. Look at those things. Victorian men loved their fancy beards. Anyhow, and it is takes place in Norway. He is Norwegian. It was written in Norwegian, called El Dukium. But it's been done a bazillion times. In fact, if you've ever heard of Dr. Hannibal Lecter from the character from Silence of the Lambs, that actor played Torvald in the 1960s version of the play. But you're going to watch a more modern one. In any case, so one fun thing I like to do when I introduce this to the class is about this game called 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's a game where you try to make connections between how all of us are connected within like 6 steps or fewer. So let me play this video for you, and I'm going to talk to you about how not only am I 6 degrees or less away connected to this guy, but so are you then, because you know me. So let me play this little video about what it is.
6 degrees of separation. The theory that everyone and everything is 6 or fewer degrees or steps away from each other. You might be familiar with Stanley Milgram, a social psychologist best known for his experiments on obedience at Yale, which involved delivering electric shocks in a so-called memory test with increasing intensities. In 1967, Milgram coined the phrase 6 degrees of separation after conducting his small world experiment, describing that growing social networks had a world-shrinking effect. The experiment tested how many steps it took for a package to be delivered from the West Coast in the US to a stockbroker in Boston by having one acquaintance mail it to another. He found that it only took an average of 6 steps to reach Boston in the 1960s. But what about now, in the 21st century, where social networking sites dominate the internet? If you use LinkedIn or Facebook, you've seen the 6 degrees of separation at work. LinkedIn uses a connection system where individual profiles in the People You May Know section are labeled as second or third connections, with a map showing how that person is related to you through your first connections, who are acquaintances already on your friends list. Similarly, Facebook shows a mutual friends count and now has a function that enables you to message friends of friends if enough shared contacts exist. It used to be that we were all just 6 degrees of separation apart, connecting anyone to anyone else via finding a friend who knew someone else, and so on. But research conducted by Facebook and the University of Milan in 2011 shows that the number of degrees is now as small as 4. 721 million active users and 69 billion friendships were analyzed for 1 month, and the results were as follows. 99.6% of all pairs of users are connected by paths within 5 degrees. 92 are connected by only 4 degrees. The average distance between all people on Facebook in 2008 was 5.28 degrees, and in 2011 it lowered to 4.74. Who knows what the number would be now? It's a small, small world. So what do you think about this theory? Do you think social networking decreases the number of degrees needed to reach someone? Let us know in the comments below.
Okay. So anyway, so we're going to play the game. The reason why it's called 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon is this idea was connected for like a kind of a movie game. Can you connect actors in movies, and it would be like friends competing, picking up like random actors and see if you could connect them, and whoever could connect them in fewer projects that they were involved in, you would win kind of the game. And Kevin Bacon was a famous actor in the 90s and 80s. He's in the first Friday the 13th movie. If you've never seen him, he's in Flashdance. He's in one of the Invisible Men movies, where he plays kind of a dark version of the Invisible Man. Gosh, it's hard to think of all the stuff he's been in, a lot. But anyway, now this Henrik Ibsen guy, I am 6 degrees or less connected to him, and I just happen to know the connections, and then just add a step, and there you are. So let's go through the game, shall we? Okay, so if you see here, the top left picture, that's me. In 2002 or 1, when my uncle got remarried. Below that is my son Gabriel, and then next to me is my brother Derek, my mom and dad, and then to the far right of that top left corner is my grandma. Now, I know my grandma, so that's 1. Okay, I know her directly. Now, let's see how many steps away it is, okay, because I know her directly, so let's see how many steps away to get to Mr. Ibsen, okay? All right, so my grandma knew her grandpa, which is this guy. His name is Ludvig Bjørn. He's from Norway, so you can see this is going to be a pretty quick jump. Ludvig Bjørn, which Bjørn is Norwegian for bear. His name is Ludvig. That's my great-great-grandpa, right? But I didn't know him. Of course, he died before I existed. So, but that's 1 step. She knew him, of course. So that's 1 degree away. Okay. So grandma to Ludvig. Right, 1. Right? Okay. Now Ludvig knows his dad, or his grandpa. Sorry, excuse me. It's either his dad or his grandpa, but I know he knows him, and his name is, that's my great-grandpa at least, but I think that's his grandpa. I'm forgetting now, but anyway, his name is Nils Andreas Bjørn. He actually has a Wikipedia page in Norwegian, and he's mentioned on another one. He was a minister from Norway, from what was then called Christiania, is now called Oslo. But he did move around because back then Norway, if you were a clergy member, you were a member of the government, you were an employee of the government, and you would be assigned like military to whatever church you were supposed to go to. Okay. So he had to go to like central Norway for a while, and that's where he met my grandmother. But anyway, so that's 2 degrees away now, right? And here's actually a bust of him that was done of him. So he's kind of a big deal because of something. That's a painting of him when he was young. I think the collar's supposed to mean he's like a college student or and a part of the papacy. Not that he's a pope, but like I misspoke. He was a minister, right, for the Lutheran Church for the state. Anyway, so that's 2 degrees away, right? All right. Now, Nils, my great-great-great-grandfather, went to college and was good buddies with this guy named Henrik Wergeland. Henrik Wergeland was he's considered like the Percy Shelley if you don't know who Percy Shelley is, that's the husband of Mary Shelley who wrote Frankenstein, okay? And he was like a big deal poet. And so was my great-great-great-grandfather's friend, okay? And he actually was, and a person who's a big fanboy of his poetry is Henrik Ibsen. And in fact, Henrik Ibsen even used some of his poetry in what was called the Peer Gynt, which we'll get to in a minute. But anyway, that's a painting of Henrik Wergeland. There's a holiday for him. He's such a big deal. He wrote poetry fighting for the freedom of Jews and the equality for Jews in Norway back in the Victorian era. Anyway, so that's, we're getting to 3 degrees now, right? Because, of course, they were best friends. Now, how we're connected is even messier. It's not going to be Oedipal bad, but here we go. So this is his wife, Henrik Wergeland's wife. And unfortunately, Henrik Wergeland, and that's a photo of her when she was older. This is a painting of her. She was an aristocratic lady who married him They had no children together. Had married Henrik Vergerland. Okay, they had no children together. He had one child with somebody else. But anyway, they were married for several years. Love of her life. And he was she was the love of his. Blah blah blah. But he dies young, either of lung cancer or tuberculosis. We're not sure. It's unclear. Some lung thing. And his best friend, my great 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 grandfather, did his funeral service. And being the minister at the funeral, he was consoling the widow. He too was a fresh widower and knew how it felt. My great 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 grandmother had passed away after having 3 children, one of them being my, great great, being the guy I showed you in the picture before, that emigrated to America in the Victorian era, Ludwig. Anyhow, well, the 2 of them were consoling each other, and guess what happened? They got married and had like 7 kids or 5 kids, a whole bunch of a brood. Okay, so I guess Henrik Vergerland's my step great 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 grandfather in a way, right? Because sorta, right? Because he's the dead husband of my step great 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 grandma. So I'm not blood related, but they're both connected to her because he married her after that. So anyway, so that's 3 steps. Okay, now here comes 4. Last one. Henrik Vergerland. His poetry was used by Ibsen when he wrote the musical The Peer Gynt, which I guarantee you know. Okay, and so the music was written by another very famous Norwegian, named Edvard Grieg. Okay, again, he is on stamps, airplanes, paintings, maybe even money. He's a huge, huge, huge deal. He's like the Wagner of Norway. If you don't know who Wagner is, I know you know their music, and I know you know this music by Edvard Grieg, and the story and lyrics by Ibsen, and my kind of sort of step great 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 grandpa, right? Vergerland. It was used in one of the songs at the end. Okay, so that's the connection there, right? So it's all connected. And this, you can see here a CD picture that I put in here of the Peer Gynt, which is done by the Moscow Symphony Orchestra on this picture. But this is very famous. There's a couple songs in it that I know that you have heard because it's so big in cartoons or TV shows or commercials. They're used over and over again. So here we go. That's 4. And let me play it for you. And so you're 5 steps away, right, from Henrik Ibsen. Less than 6. We made it. Okay? You might even be connected to him even closer if you have Norwegian ancestry, or who knows, right? Or musicians in your family. Hard to say. Anyway, so there you go. Now, here's a piece I know you know. Let me hit play. I know you know it. Okay. In the Hall of Mountain King again. All right, so I bet your bottom dollar you know that one. And it's so popular, there's like even dubstep versions. Let me play a teeny bit of that. And there's even trap versions. Skip a little bit. All right, you get the point. Anyway, there's another piece I guarantee you know. This is used in like every cartoon I think I've ever seen as a child. I'll only play a little bit of this one. I know you know it. I think even Gumball used that one. Okay. So anyway, so that's Mr. Ibsen. Just a little fun beginning there. All right. So what is this all about? So now it's time to start taking notes. Okay. Here we go. So Ibsen's form of plays were known as realism. It was a movement of the 19th century theater where things were supposed to be like part of real life, which ancient Greek tragedy also was trying to have this thing called mimesis, which mimicked real life. It felt real. At least the emotions feel real. And the aim of this movement of making plays more realistic and less fantastic, although the Peer Gynt is fantastic, that's a different kind of play, brings a greater fidelity of real life to texts and performances, right? It's about making it feel real that everybody can connect to and relate in some way, right? Because mimesis is supposed to reflect the truth of the human condition. And that's what this is trying to do, is to get us to look at ourselves, reflect upon ourselves, deal with the issues in our own life and that kind of stuff. Okay. And remember my phrase about gnothi sauton, to know thyself. This is a big existentialist theme about who are you truly? Who are you at your core? Are you acting in a performative, conformist way to fit in, or are you living your authentic truth, right? And you need to be able to, you have to got to think about these kinds of questions about who am I? And am I allowing other people to tell me who I am, or am I making myself? Am I being what Martin Heidegger, which is another video I'm gonna make you guys watch, Martin Heidegger, as he said, like, are we being a they self or my own self, right? Am I defined by others, or am I self-defined, right? To be an authentic person, you need to define yourself and not let others tell you who you are. And it's about the individual having power to choose and to not have these external forces or fate tell us who we are. It's very existentialist. So if you're doing a Doll's House, which you are, you're going to have to learn about some existentialist stuff, even though we are also looking at it through Aristotle's elements of what a tragedy should have in it. Because that's why this is a replacement for the fall. And we got to focus, and it focuses on everyday middle class dramas with ordinary speech. It's not fancy, even though he's known as the Shakespeare of the Victorian era. That doesn't mean it's, fluff and hard to follow like Shakespeare. It's common language. It should not be hard. And the settings are dull. It's in an apartment in Norway in the winter. That's it. It's not meant to be these fantastic places and adventures. It's meant to be about our lives, the drama within everyday life. Okay. And what this it's actually, the genre is called the well-made play. Okay. And the plot is based on a secret. So think about that. There is a secret in a doll's house, and the unfolding of that secret and the truth coming out is important to the whole point of the play. Okay, we all have secrets, but they can bite us, right? And truth is important. If you want to be an authentic person, you can't be lying to the world, right? And in a well-made play, the secret's only known to some characters, right? But the revelation provides what's called the peripeteia, the turning point. So if you haven't watched it already, make sure that you do the Edpuzzle on Aristotle's tragedy, and that will make sense. Think about it. You start off, life's great, and then there's this turning point, and the fall happens. And why does the fall happen? Because of some choice that you made, right? That led to your, let's say, doom, right? For everything going upside down, which is what Aristotle called the peripeteia, which is the reversal of fortune, going from good to bad. Okay. Or somehow like the status quo, a different kind of life. And then anagnoresis is the wisdom, the awakeness, the epiphany of, oh my God, what have I done? Of you realizing, oh, all this stuff that happened is my fault, right? And that's where wisdom comes from. Responsibility, duty, owning the truth, not hiding from yourself, not hiding from reality, not making excuses. That's existentialism, about being utterly responsible for yourself, for your decisions, and being honest with yourself and the world about who you are. Okay. And that's why I put it as an existential epiphany. It's that who am I? And that's what this play is really about, is about Nora discovering who she is, and maybe also Torvald, okay, discovering who he is. More stuff about the well-made play is that initially there's exposition providing info on the secret. So as you're watching A Doll's House, you're going to see this kind of like talk, kind of gossip, spilling tea kind of stuff behind closed doors about blah, 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 right? And it's going to get, and the drama's going to build and build. So it's not unlike a telenovela, but it has a kind of existential point, not just to make you shocked, or to go, oh my goodness, I can't believe they did that. It has a deeper meaning than that. And it's usually through kind of like dialogue, through questions and answers about, what happened, the preceding events, right? That what's called the antecedent action, what happened before. Because some things happened in the past before the play started. And we're going to be learning about the things that Nora and Torvald and Krogstad and all the characters, like their past, right? And now all these characters' past are going to come up and get entwined, and the drama happens because of this kind of culminating crisis, because of these past actions all the characters have made that can lead to good or bad. Okay. And it does feel kind of soap opera and gossipy in a way, but it does have more meaning than just tea spilling. Okay. Some important facts about the play. Okay. It was published in 1879. It takes place during Christmas. As I said, in Norwegian, its original title is Et Dukkehjem, which the Doll's House. Okay. It's pronounced Et Dukkehjem, right? Like that. And it was written in Rome, actually, in the Amalfi Coast during a time of a lot of revolution in Europe. If you're taking honors, world history, or AP Euro, you probably learned about all the many, many, many wars in the 19th century in Europe. And he was having some health problems, and he kind of had his character Torvald go through the same kind of a thing, where the family goes to Italy for the warmer weather, because Norway's very cold. And if you're sick, sometimes doctors would send you to go south to heal. Where it was warm, you're more likely to do well than the stress of being so cold. And so this was a shift in time. It was going from people living in an agrarian society where they're, farmers, to moving to the city with the Industrial Revolution. There was a lot of changing of map borders and who's the ruler of what. Democracy was, starting to really take its place in certain parts of the world, but not in many others still. Like France had it and America had it, but most of the other places were still royal kinds of, monarchies still going on. There was big questions about religion and the meaning of life, and existentialism started at this time in Denmark and in Prussia with Friedrich Nietzsche and Soren Kierkegaard. Okay. For example, Nietzsche came up with this famous quote that a lot of people misunderstand: Gott ist tot, which means in German, God is dead. And the full quote, something like, God is dead and we have killed him, and what have we done now with the blood on our hands? And what he's saying is not that there is no God, he's just saying that God Then religion is not so much a core of everybody's every waking moment of their life. They're kind of moving away what's called secularization, and they're looking to, because if this is, post Enlightenment, people are starting to look at science, like the periodic table of elements was being developed at this time. Towards the end of it, we started to get our first vaccines against smallpox by using cowpox. We're getting the first antibiotics. So it was this big, science was just really, kicking into gear. And so it was a very different time. And all this change was causing a lot of provoked, heated discussions. And so did this play. It sold out even before the first presentation even happened, because they heard about what the play was about, and it was so shocking to the Victorian brain that they're like, oh my goodness, the scandalous thing, I need to see this, right? It would have been TikTok famous kind of a thing where people were like, chatting about it before it even came out. And in fact, it was banned in Germany because of how it ended, and I don't want to ruin it for you. But it was challenged, and he had to change the ending due to what Ibsen called barbaric outrage. Because what Ibsen is doing is questioning what the relationship of gender roles should be. And about the idea of marriage, like what is it to be a wife or a husband, to be a woman or a man. And it was questioning those kinds of roles, like why can't a woman have a job and find fulfillment in something besides being a mother and a wife? Is that all that they are? Why can't a man stay home and take care of children? Why not? What's wrong with that? Right? But that was shocking. And divorce was an almost new back then. The husband pretty much owned their wife and children, at that time. So women were treated like children, as if we're idiots, and the husband could put you in a mental institution because you were too sassy. Who knows? So it was a very different world than it is now. Henrik Ibsen was what he would call a humanist. He didn't like the term feminist, but he was arguing for gender equality. Okay, and so he's attacking these kinds of middle class assumptions about what the values were of of that kind of traditional setup, right? And so he made just a mere housewife the focus of a play. That was unheard of, right? I mean, at least Antigone, she's a princess. And by the way, the version you're watching, same actress playing Nora as was playing Antigone. Okay, so that'll be fun. You'll see her. It's about, 7 years later, something like that. So it's like, I'll say mid-90s, early 90s this was done. Anyhow, that's shocking. Like, why are we focusing on some, woman who should be seen and not heard kind of stuff? Not in this. This is all about the housewife. So it's I think a lot of people use the term feminist today, but he didn't like that. He didn't, different ideas of what that word means. And this whole thing of Nora questioning who she is and what she wants for herself was a metaphor for him, for all of Europe asking itself, who are we and who do we want to be? Right? Those kinds of huge questions, right? And as I said, I would argue that this is feminist, but he would use the term humanist, but I think in the end it's the same thing. Anyhow, so he wanted to dissolve this idea of what, quote unquote, a wife is. And this existentialist theme follows from this disillusion, this destruction of the term, this role wife. You have to understand, existentialists were against people fulfilling roles that society ascribes to us, right? The existentialists, particularly like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus and Martin Heidegger, the three I'm going to have you learn about, at least Heidegger, for this, is about getting away from this idea of fulfilling I'll have you do Sartre and Heidegger, I think. So anyway, Camus not really necessary for this one, just Sartre and Heidegger will do for you. But anyway, existentialists were big about not fulfilling that kind of level 3 conformist thinking. That's where they thought most people lived, and Kohlberg agreed, and he's trying to get people to wake up and to find out their true, authentic selves. Who are you? What do you believe? What do you want? So you can move up that ladder, right? The existentialist, and I would say, even though he wouldn't have used the term, Ibsen says that, every individual, man or woman, needs to find out what kind of person they are and to strive to become that person, right? And to be honest with the world. Okay. And both Nora and Tolvard all are trapped by the societal expectations of what a husband and a wife must be. And this whole play is about breaking that apart. Okay. So here are the characters you need to know. Okay, there's Nora Helmer. She's the main character, and as you can see, that is Antigone with a Victorian haircut instead, Victorian outfits, or Victorian do, I should say. She is a housewife. She is the wife of Torvald. She is the protagonist of the entire play. It revolves around here. She's the focus. Okay, and she's got a secret. We'll see what that secret is. Okay. And this is Torvald, her husband. Okay. Torvald Helmer, and he is the husband, of course, and he's a banker who just got promoted to bank manager, and it's going to be a ton of more money in the household, much more stability. They're happy. It's Christmas time. Things are good. As soon as the new year starts, he starts his new job, but Nora's hiding a secret from him. And I want you to just think about that. Why would a woman need to feel to have a secret against her husband? Oh, not against her husband, but like from her husband. You know, the things that we tend to have secrets on are the things we feel we can't be free to say. So what is she not free to say? And why? Right? And what would be the repercussions if the secret gets out? You know, that tells you who has power. Right? All right, Krogstad. There's no villain in the story, but he might seem like one at first. But Krogstad is a lawyer who worked at the bank with Torvald, but he made a bad decision in life, and he had a falling out. He went to school with Torvald, just like my great-great-great-grandfather went to school with Henrik Wergeland, who's connected to Ibsen. They went to school together, and so it's kind of weird when you are a boss of your friend. It makes things weird, and Torvald doesn't handle it well, but he also made a mistake in life. He was desperate and did something not morally upright. Not super bad, but a financial crime, let's say. And Torvald just can't stand him anymore because of that. Like, he just can't forgive him. But he also knows the secret. It involves him with Nora, and it's not that kind of secret. Okay, nothing tawdry. All right, but he is in a subordinate position at the bank. All right, he's a lesser because he got demoted because of his mismanagement of money, let's say. After his wife died and he was desperate for money to help raise his children, he did something stupid with money. But anyway, and because of that, he's got a low-paying subordinate job. So he's still kind of doing what we would call today loan sharking, giving loans to people that aren't kosher, that aren't legal, and then he would collect so basically he loans his money and then he gets the interest back with the payments, right? So that's a little underhand. Now, here's the problem. In Nora's world, okay, in this Victorian world, women could not get bank accounts. They could not, without a man taking care of it, they could not take out loans without their husband co-signing it. Women couldn't get credit cards in America till, I think, the 70s or late 60s. So this is something that's not that, old, that women did not have control over their financial life. And so I just want you to think about that. That's part of the secret, okay, is about this money stuff, okay? And he's got other secrets too, okay? This is Mrs. Linde. This is Nora's childhood friend. She is also widowed. So Krogstad is a widower. She's a widow. Kind of like my family situation, right? It's kind of funny. She was widowed from a loveless marriage. She married for money, not to be gross, but because her family was desperate. Her parents were sick, and she had small siblings, and she felt a duty to not marry for love, but to marry for financial stability, to help out the family. He was an older man who passed away, and now her parents are gone. Her siblings are grown up, so now she's finally free, and she's come to Oslo, or Christiania, to find a job. And she's going to see her friend Nora from school to see if she can help her, because of course her husband has connections, right? And she has no children, okay, and that's important. And she's looking for work, so she has no one. Okay. All right. The next character is Dr. Rank. He is like best friends with Torvald, or at least a really close friend. He's a family friend that comes over all the time. He's also has no wife or children. He is a bachelor, and he's very lonely. So this is kind of like his family of choice coming over. And he is sick and dying of a inherited disease from his father doing naughty things behind his wife's back and got them all infected with syphilis. And if you're a baby, a fetus with a mother who is syphilitic, you can have all sorts of horrible things happen. And for him, he has syphilis in his spine. And because of that, he can never be with anybody because they had no cure for it back then. So he's doomed to always be a bachelor, and he's very lonely and sad. But he also has a great sense of humor. But, he's not doing well. But he's there to be kind of like a friend of both Nora and Torvald. But they have different kind of relationships. Okay. Anyway. And there's also the children. They might have a couple lines here and there. They've got 3 children. And then there's a nanny, and there's a housekeeper, Anne Marie. There's a housekeeper, and then Anne Marie's the nanny. And the housekeeper has only a couple lines. They're not major. But do know that Nora and Torvald do have 3 small children. And that's important when you're making decisions for your life, right? Okay, and they have enough money to have a nanny, although back then that was pretty common for middle-class people to have a nanny and a maid. Nowadays, that's less common unless you're rich, but back then that was a more doable thing. The Victorians didn't have any labor laws. You could pay someone almost nothing. So you'll probably learn about that in your history classes in APUSH next year or U.S. history. Anyway, they are part of the upper middle class. They are living in this beautiful urban apartment in Oslo. As I said, it is Christmas time. And the play focuses on the way women are seen, especially in the context of marriage and motherhood, as I had said. Torvald believes that it is the sacred duty of women to be a good wife and a mother. But their identity, that means that Nora's identity is chosen for her. It's fated. That is not self-chosen. That is not her deciding what she wants, right? That's just, she had to. All right, that's all there is, okay? Pretty much. If you were a woman who didn't have children or a spouse, you could work in some jobs, but if you got married, you were fired because they needed to give that to someone who needs to support themselves. Really, you could be a governess and a secretary maybe, and, that kind of stuff, but not much teacher, which is what a governess kind of is as a private teacher, right? You could be a nanny, that kind of stuff. But those are very supportive kind of roles for men. And that's like Heidegger's idea about a they self, her fulfilling the roles that society tells her and what her husband's telling her, not what she's deciding for herself, right? So that's why it's called a doll's house, you guys. She's like a little dolly being played house with, and her husband owns the dollhouse, and she's just a doll, right? And Torvald tells Nora that women are responsible for the morality of their children. There's an important scene that you'll see about, 35 minutes in, where he explains this. And he sees women as both childlike and helpless, who don't know anything, and that they're detached from reality, and they're just silly little things. But they're also the most influential human being in the entire planet, because if it wasn't for strong moral women, all the adults in the world would be corrupted and corroded morally. So you're the most important and the least significant. Do you see the paradox here? It's a problem, right? So which one is it, right? Is she utterly responsible or utterly irresponsible? And so that's kind of the pull that she is feeling. She may not think about it that way, but that is her reality. Utter responsibility, utter irresponsibility of being treated like a child and seen as nothing but. So some of the motifs in this play is the images of women. You're going to notice Torvald uses a lot of animal terms towards Nora. And the question is that endearing to call someone your little turtle dove or your little squirrel, or is it patronizing to use animal language for a human being, right? Think about how even, in the 50s they had terms like chick for women, right, that we still say, right? That's a baby bird, right? What's up with that, right? And he uses terms like little songbird, my little squirrel, my little lark, little featherhead, which means you're stupid, right? Which, again, that's that bird imagery, like you're a bird brain, because people misunderstood that birds were dumb. Many species of birds are one of the most brilliant animals on the planet, right? Little skylark, right? Little person, little women. He loves that little, like he's belittling her, right? Even though he doesn't maybe mean to, right? And he usually has that possessive pronoun of my little songbird, my little featherhead, my little person, like he owns her. And in the Victorian era, he did. Legally. Okay. Light is another big motif here. Towards the climax of the story, pay attention to when Nora brings a lamp in. Something's going on there with bringing in more light. right? What is Ibsen trying to say when she brings in a lamp at the scene where things get real awkward and like, uh-oh, things are about to go down, okay? Some symbols to look out for. She has a ball gown that she has, that she's going to be wearing, this dress for the Tarantella dance. What might that dress that Torvald picked out for his wife to wear and to dance at the Christmas party represent? Like, he picked it out. He picked out her clothes. Just think about that for a second, right? Again, doll's house, okay? Like, who is she wearing this dress for? And what's its purpose? Okay. All right. Some symbols here. Another one is the Tarantella dance. What might the dance represent? This is a dance she learned when they were in the Amalfi Coast of Southern Europe, in Italy, and they learned a local dance, and it's about this myth in that area that they thought a tarantula bite could heal diseases. The Victorian medicine, you're lucky if you survived, but they did the best they could. And this is like pre-Victorian medicine. This is like an old folk myth kind of a thing. And so it's supposed to represent the franticness of the tarantula biting and all that stuff. And it starts off fast to begin with, but then it gets faster and faster and faster and faster, and it fluctuates between major and minor keys. If you don't know, major keys are happy, minor keys are usually somber, right, and sad or angry, right? They're dark and moody. So this is definitely symbolic of something going on with our main character and the story as a whole, okay, with her kind of spinning out of control, right? And while we watch and read, I want you to look for those elements of existentialism and feminism from some other ed puzzles I'm going to show you about existentialism, okay? But, just from the kind of feminist things I've talked about here. And I also want you to be looking for and taking notes on looking for the concept of tragic hero, okay? That's important because that's what you're going to be writing about. You're going to be arguing who's the tragic hero, Nora or Torvald. So you're going to be watching another ed puzzle if you haven't already. I'm not sure what order you're doing this in. About tragedy, okay? About Aristotle's theory about all tragic stories have to have these common elements. So you're going to be looking for that. Which one fulfills the check box? And I'm going to give you like a little handout that has like all the elements that kind of help guide you, okay? Ignore this comment that's in there. That's old. That's when I gave just a doll's house to the whole class. Ignore that. That question, study guide, blah, blah, blah. No, don't worry about it. Okay. Never mind that. Okay. So, never mind that stuff either. Nope. This is just for when I did it in class. Nope. All in class. Nope. All in class. See if there's anything else I need to give you. This was just and walking in the room when we did it a whole class. Yeah, this is just about the Socratic seminar. Okay, just making sure there's nothing else you needed. Anything else? Nope. Okay, so that's it. I will be giving you stuff on existentialism, specifically Martin Heidegger and Monsieur Jean-Paul Sartre. And when you're done with all the pre-ed puzzles, then I want you to move on to watching A Doll's House. It is long. You can take, because, it's a full movie play. Watch it as much as you can. You don't have to finish ed puzzle in one sitting. That would be nuts. But I hope this has helped. Reach out if you have any questions about anything, of course, while you're from home healing. And I hope you're feeling okay and that you heal quickly and come back. Quicker than the doctors anticipate. So, talk to you later, Haley. Bye-bye.